exhausted. I took so many photos. How many was that? 2,000? 4,000? On 2 bodies? Wait, no, I used 3. Now what do I do with them? I'm not going home. I gotta head to that next wedding tomorrow. What if something happens before I get there? Maybe I'll just head home first. Oh no. Back on the road. Well, hey, it's Wes, and today we have a new product that I feel like has been a long time coming. The UnifyDrive UT2 portable NAS. That's a mouthful. It's a mouthful because this thing does a lot of stuff. You might remember the Gnarbox, the ubiquitous, well, infamous backup storage solution that you saw everywhere, but you didn't see a lot in person, unfortunately. Something that I always meant to get, but never did. It always seemed just to be like one step behind in terms of technology, but had a pretty high price. Remember the Gnarbox? Was that even real? Did that happen? Or was that just a dream? So many photos. UnifyDrive, a new company, new architecture, we're gonna get into the whole politics of all of this, has come out with a new device that is just everything jammed into one in a shockingly small size. What does it do? We'll find out, and as always, we're going to start with the build quality. First of all, this device can be wired or wireless, as is important for something like this. So, I unplug the power, unplug the networking. This is going to immediately connect to my Wi-Fi, uninterrupted network connection. This, speaking of uninterrupted, has been sitting very comfortably on my network without the need to reconnect constantly, as some NASs have to, some don't. This one has been very persistent. I like that. Shut it down, turn it back, reappears, no problem. As you can see, we have like a center aluminum chassis and then plastic on the ends where we have all of the I/O, and there is a lot of I/O. The chassis itself is pretty rigid. And if we turn it over here, don't try this at home. Gotta pull out the box. It comes with an accessory screwdriver. Not nearly as nice as the other screwdrivers I have, but hey, it's a nice touch. A lot of NASs come with a screwdriver like that though. I'll take this screw out. It's not a captive screw. And we can see inside. And inside, we can see that we have 2 M.2 slots. So this isn't just some you get what you get and you don't get upset sort of drive. You can put up to 2 8TB M.2 modules in here and configure it as a RAID or as just a bunch of storage and give you 16 terabytes. So 8 or 16 is your max. I have a medium speed 512 in here just for testing. Kind of wish I had put a faster one in there, as we'll comment on later. As you can see, we have a fan system. So this is not waterproof or water resistant. And that is the biggest problem I have with this. If this was just a home design, that wouldn't be an issue at all. But this is something that is meant to be able to go on the road. It has a built-in battery, so it's going to be a 9 out of 10 for build quality. I once dropped it 4 feet while filming B-roll, and it was fine. It did, however, have the included rubber case on it. I'm not sure if that made much of a difference, but you can have this on or not. Slides a little easier into the bag this way. Depends on how often you drop stuff though. I could just bring my laptop, leave it in the car. No, that's ridiculous. That thing's expensive. I still don't feel better. My files are just on these little bits of plastic inside my camera. Can I even be sure that they're there? That they won't be corrupted when I plug them into my computer? I mean, sure, I shoot on dual cards, but I have had a camera corrupt both cards at the same time before. Or lightning. Ugh, that lightning strike. Hardware specs and features. This doesn't have the usual N100 low-power Intel processor that a lot of NASs have. They could have easily used that. This is a slightly lower power processor, which is the Rockchip RK3588. And if we look at the benchmarks here, we will see that this comes in just a little bit below the N100. However, the operating system on this appears to be very well tuned, and it has 8 gigs of RAM built in. You can't upgrade that as far as I know. 32 gigs of onboard storage, so the operating system already has a place outside of those M.2 slots. And this thing has been running super snappy, no hang-ups or glitches or anything like that. So obviously this processor that it has is more than sufficient for what it does. Now, once you're ingesting your content, you're backing up your files, you can connect to it over Wi-Fi with your phone using the app and just see what's going on inside there. You can check the tasks, you can even see the files as they're being loaded onto the device. And actually specifically check the status of the backup task. Now in the background, much like the Ugreen NAS that we saw previously, it does have image recognition and file sorting and indexing and all that going on. So it is going to leverage that chip and its neural engine for a bunch of different functions. Now let's get into some detail on the I/O here. We have a 2.5 gig Ethernet port. I appreciate that. It would have been so easy for them to just cheap out a little bit and put a 1 gig port on there. It's 2.5. Obviously, I prefer 10 gig ports, but my 10 gig Thunderbolt adapter is probably bigger and heavier than this thing is, so I can't expect that, although I would love it. We have an HDMI port, and built into this is its own HDMI navigation system. There's a bit of a authentication rigmarole to get through that, and the remote control that comes with it is not paired by default. It's a Bluetooth remote. That's kind of annoying that you have to do the Bluetooth pairing thing. Comes with it in the box. Should come prepared. Prepared. So that's great. You don't have to use your phone to navigate the HDMI interface like on the Ugreen OS system. It's just built in that way. You do, however, have to go into the system and assign the video folders and get that set up in advance. So it's not all easy peasy, but the reason for that is that this device is built first around a secure interface, so that creates some headaches for the sake of that. Moving on, we have our USB power delivery port. So this is how this is powered and charged. You can power this off of anything. It comes with this 33 watt, I believe, power brick. Most of the time it's only drawing between 6 and 12 watts. I've never seen it go above 16, but apparently it can take up to 30. And you can power that off of anything, a battery bank, your USB cigarette lighter adapter, as long as it's a power delivery one. And you can just unplug it and take it on the go and plug it in somewhere else. And in the operating system, you can choose what happens when you unplug it, whether it shuts down right away or after a certain amount of time, or when the battery reaches a certain amount. That's all up to you, all customizable. Flip it over here. We have a USB-C port where you can plug an external hard drive into it and accept further data. We also have a CF Express Type B slot. Included in the box is an adapter for CF Express Type A. Let's get this in the right way here. But it's a little bit kludgy. I'm not sure that I'll be bringing that around with me, especially since with the disk that I have in here, the M.2, I'm not really usually maxing out the speed of the UHS-2 slot. I'm mostly just offloading my cards somewhere around 200 to 260 megabits per second. And we also have a very fast USB-A port. These are 5 gigabit per second ports. And so if you're in the field, you can take your SD card, pop it in there, and double click your file button. And again, you can customize what happens and how. The usual thing to do is you double click the file button, it ingests the files, and then when it's done, auto ejects, pull it out, put it back in your camera. This Has a lot going on here. Not the most powerful processor, not the most powerful Ethernet, but honestly, I can't imagine them fitting any more into this tiny chassis. It is, however, going to be an 8.5 out of 10 for hardware specs and features. It is an inherently mobile device with some compromises that still work well.
I need something that doesn't have to be plugged in. What if I just mail the cards home right now? Wait, that doesn't even make sense. Or I need some fresh air. To touch grass. Maybe that'll make me feel better.
You know what makes me feel better? That this has a suspiciously complete operating system. Let's talk about that in software. This runs what's called UDOS, UnifyDrive OS, UDOS. Already includes Docker, already supports encryption, encrypted pools, user accounts, access control, cloud-based systems, which I'm not going to touch. That's just my thing. The only issue that I really had with this was that I had some brief issues with resetting the admin password. There's a lot of stuff that you can't do on this if you're not logged in as admin, like connecting to the TV and basic file access stuff. And I lost my password, and it was a little bit reluctant to reset it. There's a bit of a hardware hoops that you have to jump through, and it took a few tries for that to work for me. There is also a feature that you can turn this into a USB accessible drive. Unfortunately, you're essentially creating a second partition that is just for the USB drive. It would be really nice if it could all be unified. I see two reasons why they don't do that. Number one, there appears to be some sort of difficult hardware limitation to that I don't understand, because a lot of NAS manufacturers have difficulty creating a NAS that's also a SAN. You can look up those terms. Also, again, this is a security-first device, so if you basically turn this whole thing to a flash drive, all these files would immediately be accessible to anyone who just plugs it in, and that's what they don't want on this. But I would like the option to choose that. I'm not putting secure files on this for the most part. This is just everyday work backup. Let's say I go to a wedding, I'm on the road, I'm on the highway. I definitely don't want to have to drag my $4,000+ MacBook Pro to a wedding and leave it in my car. It's just too much. I take all my camera gear with me, I keep it on me. That's already stressful enough. It's great to have this on me. They're not private files, it's just a very great peace of mind backup that I can come home, plug it into my network, and boom, everything's there, checkable, readable, interfaceable, lovely. I can tap that wireless button and connect my phone to it to check everything as well, play through, view through. You can even set it to automatically back up everything on your phone, but I'm an iCloud guy myself, I'm not gonna do that. What we don't have here is a clear path to a third-party app ecosystem. Maybe it's coming, I haven't talked to them about that. It's not a big thing that I'm interested in personally, but a lot of people, that is very important to them. To each their own there. Not a big deal to me, but I'm gonna give this a 9 out of 10. Again, remarkably polished and complete interface system for something that is launching as a crowdfund. In advance, if you want to get in on that crowdfund, there's going to be a link down in the description. We'll talk about the caveats there later on. Next up is networking performance. As I had mentioned, we have a 2.5 gig Ethernet port. There's also Wi-Fi 6. Let's check out our benchmarks here, speed tests. The speed test app is built into this. I greatly appreciate that. And so you can easily test and see that it is maxing out the 2.5 gig, maxing out the Wi-Fi. That's fantastic. A lot of things will come with, let's say, a 10 gig or a high-spec network port, and they're just not good at architecturally leveraging that. This leverages everything. Again, the software is just remarkably complete. It's bizarre. I feel like maybe it's a fork of an existing NAS software system or something. NAS Compares thinks that they built it from the ground up though. And I mean, he knows more than I do about that sort of thing. This one's easy. I had no hiccups with interface, with SMB, with reaching top speeds. It's a 9 out of 10 for networking performance. Again, because it leverages everything that's inside it, but it doesn't have the top specs. I wouldn't expect Wi-Fi 7, it has Wi-Fi 6. I wouldn't expect 10 gig, it has 2.5, but there are existing systems that are faster. Value. This one is both easy and tricky. Let me explain. Again, the elephant in the room, the Gnarbox, it doesn't technically exist anymore. There are still some in stock in Canada, but it is discontinued. That was a $500 device. Now, if we want to scour the internet for other options, there was the WD My Passport Wireless, discontinued. There was the Nextdo DI, discontinued. There is, somewhere out there, the Clouzen Tainer. It has a screen, 2-hour battery, 2 terabyte SSD, gigabit Ethernet. You can get a no SSD version for $445, SSD version for $625. As far as I can tell, that is the only thing out there. And it does not seem like quite as polished product, but it has a screen. This one, the crowdfunding version is $400, and when it comes out, $600 MSRP. As far as I'm concerned, that $400 price point is bonkers low, and the $600 MSRP seems like a lot, but compared to the $500 Gnarbox, which had a quarter of the features of this, that's a fantastic price. But, gonna have to stretch this. But, obviously, we have some caveats here. When the Ugreen NASs came out, I had a lot of faith because it was a polished product and it had a huge company behind it. Ugreen is bigger than you think that they are. And they came out with a massive product lineup all at once. It would have cost them way too much to develop that many devices and then abandon it. This one, however, is almost the opposite of that. Now, I don't mean that negatively. Number one, the software is more polished than the Ugreen's was. The hardware, however, is much simpler and more limited. It's just one device, and it's a significantly less complex device. Additionally, we have a much smaller company. You look on their website, you go to the About Us, it says that they have years of NAS experience, innovative AI capabilities, proven hardware development. But okay, they obviously know what they're doing here. They did a fantastic job. But take all of this with a grain of salt. This is not a massive pre-existing corporation so far as I know, but I have to say, brilliant packaging, great hardware design, fantastic implementation. I would be shocked if they did not come out with the final full production run of this. They have clearly invested a lot of work in this, and it is strangely polished for a company this new and a product that is going through crowdfunding. So again, I have some questions about how they managed to produce software this good at this stage of the game.
So that gives us a value of 10 out of 10, and in the end, a total score of 91%. A very strong showing. What they did well.
What do you think? Because I really want to know. This thing is still operating on battery right now. I've been recording for a long time. Is this worth it? I think it's definitely worth it. Is this something that is a compelling product for you? Do we still live in a world where we need the Gnarbox, where we need the UnifyDrive, where we can back up and play and interface from anywhere to anywhere with anything? I think that this was a sorely needed device, and honestly, I feel like there should be a less bells and whistles version of this from UnifyDrive. UnifyDrive, if you're listening, I think you are. I don't need a cheaper version of this, but I feel like there is a wide open market for you to make a cheaper version of this to get people into that game, taking out the Ethernet jack altogether, just making it 1 gig, maybe even removing one of the ports on here, taking out the CF Express, making it a single M.2 slot. Like, there's a lot that they could do to shave off a tremendous amount of money from this product and still fulfill a massive need in the market and be able to, you know, broaden their scope very easily. Again, if you want to pick one up, there's going to be a link down in the description below. But until next time, let's go take some photos and keep them safe.